It was 10:32 on a Thursday morning when I saw the spreadsheet that made me snap. Beige conference room, one broken window blind twisting in the AC current, and the faint wet smell of burnt coffee grounds coming from the break room sink. That was the moment I realized what act like family really meant in my boss's mouth and how much I was done playing nice. They called it a quarterly realignment meeting, but what it really was a salary ambush. I worked as a senior data analyst at a mid-sized e-commerce firm in Columbus, Ohio. We sell customizable home goods, candles with your dog's face, cutting boards with your aunt's passive-aggressive sayings, pillowcases with embroidery so cursed it practically devalues the couch. I'd been there 7 years, long enough to know where the financial bodies were buried, long enough to stop pretending every pizza party was a gift. Our boss, Curtis Donnelly, liked to say he ran the office like a family. He'd say it in town halls, slap it on our Slack channel bio, and scrawl it on the damn dry erase board in the huddle room. Act like family, think like owners. It was his thing. What it meant in practice was, you stay late without complaint, you cover for the cousin who's screwing up, and you never, ever air grievances outside the house. That Thursday, he wheeled in the whiteboard again. Team, he said in that fake casual way he had. These next 2 quarters are going to be about tightening up, finding our core levers, and really trusting each other. There it was, the preamble. Everyone pretended to nod thoughtfully. I clicked open the spreadsheet link he'd just dropped in Zoom chat. And there it was, a pay cut. Not a freeze, not a delay, a cut. 5% across the board for analysts, 10% for support staff. Temporary adjustments, it said, in Comic Sans of all things. Executive salaries, not touched. I leaned back in my chair, blinking slow. Curtis was still talking, something about long-term runway and shared sacrifice. He looked right at me when he said the word family. I raised my hand. He smiled, like he was surprised, but not really. Yeah, Rick. I just have one question, I said. My voice was calm. Which part of family are we doing today? The passive-aggressive Thanksgiving part, or the dad disappears to run errands and never comes back part? The room tensed, a few chuckles, mostly awkward silence. Curtis did that thing where he pretended to chuckle along. Come on, man, he said. We're all feeling this. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't necessary. You're not asking, you're telling, and you're not cutting your pay. He stiffened. Rick, this isn't the place. You told us to act like family. I stood up. So I brought the drama. He froze. Everyone else did too. And I opened the folder. See, what Curtis didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been collecting receipts for months. Ever since my friend Sadie from accounting got quietly laid off after calling out some creative budget reshuffling. Ever since Curtis accidentally double-expensed a Vegas trip and then pressured ops to bury it. Ever since I got passed over for a promotion in favor of Brent, the guy who once asked me what a pivot table was. In my Dropbox was a folder called actlikefamily.zip. Inside it, PDF exports of budget line mismatches, internal chat logs where Curtis asked someone to fudge projections just for board optics, and, my personal favourite, a recording of him admitting to the VP of sales that he had no intention of rehiring support staff he furloughed in Q1, but wanted to keep the door open so they didn't make noise online. I emailed it to myself. I'd planned to sit on it, use it as leverage maybe, but something about that spreadsheet, the font maybe, or the way Curtis still had that smug grin like we were all just along for the ride, it just pushed something over. I opened my laptop and screen shared. Since we're all family, I said, I figured full transparency was the least I could do. It took about 4 seconds before people started gasping. What the hell is this? Curtis barked. That's your quarterly realignment, I said. Slide 2's where it gets fun. Slide 2 was a pie chart titled Where the Money Actually Goes. Not company approved, very much Rick made, very much annotated. The screen froze briefly. Curtis had cut my screen share. "I'm ending this meeting," he said, voice rising. But others had already downloaded the file. "Rick," said Jamie from HR, voice tight, "we should talk privately." "No," I said, "we should talk publicly. That's what families do, right? Talk it out." Curtis was full on red now. "This is a breach. This is a gross violation of company." I laughed. "No, Curtis. What you're doing is a violation. What I'm doing is just being the messy cousin who finally flips the table." And I left the Zoom. I didn't get fired that day, because technically I hadn't broken policy. Everything I shared was public within internal systems. But I did get called in for a values alignment conversation the next morning. The thing is, I knew I wouldn't last much longer. Curtis wasn't the forgive and forget type. He'd find a way to squeeze me out, legally or not. So I spent the weekend planning. You know what families also have? Group chats, shared memories, deep grudges. So I started calling people who'd been laid off quietly under NDA, people who'd been pushed out, ghosted, guilted into resigning. I didn't ask them to go public, I just listened, took notes, found patterns. A week later, I posted a Medium article titled "Act Like Family: How One Company Weaponized Loyalty to Gut Its Workforce." It didn't go viral, but it didn't have to, because the board saw it. And Curtis, he started sweating. I knew the next move wouldn't come from him directly. He'd be too smart for that. He'd try to play it clean, file some kind of professionalism complaint, or start documenting my performance lapses. So I got ahead of it. I went to the board, or more specifically, I went to Ellen Rowe, the one board member with a public interest background and a paper trail of championing workplace ethics. She'd always looked vaguely embarrassed during Curtis's all-hands speeches. I figured she'd listen. She did. We met in a coffee shop across town. I wore a collared shirt, printed out everything, told her I wasn't trying to burn the company down. I just wanted it to stop pretending a toxic loyalty cult was the same as acting like family. She asked smart questions, took her time, didn't say much. But when I left, I had the sense that something had shifted. A week later, HR postponed my performance improvement plan indefinitely. 2 weeks after that, Curtis cancelled the next all-hands. 3 weeks later, there was a closed-door board meeting, and then, well, that's where it really started. The knock came fast, 3 sharp raps on my apartment door, way too early for a Saturday. I hadn't even opened my eyes fully, but I knew that rhythm. Not a delivery, not a neighbour. HR. I opened the door in sweats, unshaven, crust in my eyes. Jamie stood there holding a manila envelope like it was radioactive. "Sorry to barge in. I figured this was better than another Zoom call." I blinked. "You showed up to my apartment?" She half shrugged. "It's unofficial." "I'm off the clock." I stepped aside, let her in. The envelope hit my kitchen table with a slap. "Curtis is offering a buyout," she said. 2 months severance, NDA included, standard boilerplate. "Standard until you remember the part where I'm not standard," I said, sitting. Jamie sighed. "You put him in a corner, Rick." "He's not going to forget that. This is his way of letting you go with dignity before it gets nasty." I didn't open the envelope. "I assume if I take this, the performance plan goes away." She nodded. "And if you don't take it, I think you know what happens next." I stared at the envelope. It looked like any other office document, cream-coloured, thick paper, not heavy, but it sat there between us like a cousin who knew too much at Thanksgiving. "You really showed up at my apartment for this?" I asked again. "I'm not supposed to care," Jamie said, "but you're not wrong about him. I just don't have the luxury of blowing it all up." I didn't respond. She stood to leave. "Clock's ticking. They want an answer by Monday." That weekend was a blur of walks, phone calls, and spiraling tabs of employment law searches. Everyone I talked to had the same advice. Take the money, Don't make it your life's mission. But that's the thing. It had already become personal. They used words like family to keep us loyal, to blur lines, to make us feel guilty for asking basic things like transparency or protection. They used it like a shield. Like if you complained, you were being ungrateful, difficult, dramatic. And I'd bought into it for too long, so instead of signing that NDA, I called one more person, Sadie. Holy crap, she said after I filled her in. He's still doing this. Worse. Now he's trying to bury me with a graceful exit. She exhaled. I'm still under NDA technically, but I've been talking to someone, a Labour journalist. I sat up straighter. Seriously? Yeah, her name's Aria Benton. She did a piece last year on a fintech startup doing almost the exact same thing. Weaponized family values, salary cuts for the bottom, raises at the top. Think she'd be interested? I already sent her your Medium article. She's very interested. 2 days later, I met Aria at a low-key bar near campus. She was sharp, not just in the way she dressed, black jeans, boots, loose blazer, but in the way she listened. She barely spoke for the first 15 minutes, just sipped her ginger ale and let me unload. Then she asked one question. Who else will go on record? That was the hard part. A lot of people had stories, but no one wanted to be the first name in a quote. NDAs, fear, the possibility of getting blackballed from future gigs. Let me try, I told her. Give me a week. She nodded. You're not the first guy to go toe-to-toe with the workplace dad, but you might be the first with receipts and a backbone. I started small, called Megan from procurement. She ghosted me, left a voicemail for Damien from Ops, no callback. But then Sarah, quiet spreadsheet Sarah from Customer Insights, said yes. I can't do video, she said, but I'll talk. I still remember the day Curtis told me crying was unprofessional energy. Next was Vic from design, then Marta from legal, who sent me an unsigned draft Curtis had once threatened her over. Every story was like a puzzle piece: gaslighting, overwork, nepotism, emotional blackmail disguised as team culture. I fed it all to Aria, and she got to work. The article dropped 2 weeks later. The Family That Pays in Guilt: How Loyalty Culture Masks Workplace Abuse, by Aria Benton, Labour Lines. It wasn't just about Curtis anymore. It was about the culture that let people like him thrive. About how "we're a family here" became corporate code for "don't complain or you'll be cut." My name was right there in the first paragraph. So was Curtis's. The story went viral, first in our industry Slack circles, then on LinkedIn, then on Reddit. By day 3, there was a #WorkplaceFamilyGate hashtag trending. By day 4, the Columbus Business Journal picked it up. By day 5, the board called another closed-door meeting. And that's when the real drama started. Curtis didn't get fired, not at first. They announced he was taking a leave to reflect and regroup. Classic. But you could tell the tide had turned. People stopped replying to his all-staff messages. Directors started revisiting old ethics complaints that had been shelved. Even Jamie, still at HR, texted me a single emoji, eye roll. A week later, he was transitioning out to pursue new ventures. 2 days after that, I got a call from Ellen Rowe. I read the article, she said. I read everything. Guess I'm not getting that buyout, huh? She laughed. No, but you might be getting a job offer. Excuse me, we're rebuilding, she said. New leadership. New principles. We want someone who's already proven they give a damn. I blinked. You want me to come back? Not as an analyst, she said, as an internal ethics liaison, or whatever title you want to call it. I couldn't speak for a second. You don't have to answer now, she added, but if we're going to stop pretending family is enough, we need people who know how to tell the truth. I didn't say yes right away. I wasn't even sure I wanted to go back, but I did want to make sure the next Curtis couldn't happen. So I asked for terms: full autonomy, public whistleblower protections, and the power to audit leadership decisions without red tape. Ellen agreed, and so I went back, not as the cousin flipping the table, but as the one setting new ones. The ID badge felt colder than I expected. New plastic, fresh lamination, still stiff at the edges. I clipped it on and stood just inside the glass entryway of the same office I'd walked out of 6 weeks earlier. The same floors, the same reception desk, but everything was quieter. No Curtis, no forced smiles. Just me and the low hum of systems rebooting. They gave me a new title, Workplace Integrity Partner. I didn't ask for that phrase, sounded like a corporate breakup coach, but I'd earned the autonomy behind it. I reported directly to the board, skipped the entire executive layer, and sat on hiring panels for leadership roles. And yeah, I still got side-eye from a few people, Brent especially. He survived the reshuffle somehow, and now hovered in this awkward in-between role where he managed no one and avoided eye contact like it was radiation. "You're not really going to start digging through old complaints, are you?" he asked one afternoon, cornering me at the espresso machine like this was high school. "I don't need to," I said, stirring my coffee. "Most of them are still sitting in HR untouched." He paled a little and walked away. The power wasn't in threatening anyone. It was in reminding them the silence was over. One of my first projects was a listening tour, not the fake kind where execs nod for 30 minutes and go back to doing whatever they were doing before. I met with every team, every department, one by one. No scripts, no recording, just a notepad, my full attention, and one simple prompt. What do you wish someone had actually heard? People talked, more than I expected. Sarah from Customer Insights told me how she used to cry in her car before one-on-ones. Joe from Logistics shared how he was told to suck it up when his kid was in the hospital. Miriam from Fulfillment explained how the bonus structure penalized accuracy in favor of speed, but no one had cared, until now. By week 3, I had a wall of sticky notes in my little office. Each one a quiet rebellion, a moment where someone swallowed their truth to survive. I kept them there as a reminder, not to wallow, but to never forget what family shouldn't feel like. Curtis didn't go quietly, of course. I got a call from a journalist, different outlet, asking if I wanted to comment on a podcast Curtis was launching about ethical entrepreneurship. You can't make this stuff up. He was trying to spin his exit as a strategic pivot and claimed the article had grossly mischaracterized his leadership style. I declined to comment because that was the biggest change in me. I didn't need to win the narrative anymore. The work spoke for itself. 6 months in, we ran our first company-wide climate survey under the new structure. We kept it anonymous, open-ended, and unfiltered. When the results came in, HR sat nervously in the back of the boardroom while I presented. 68% of staff say they feel safer speaking up now, I said, clicking through the slides. That's up from 21% last year. Ellen smiled. The CFO looked relieved. 31% still say they fear retaliation, I added. That's not good enough. I clicked again. But this part matters most. I paused. When leadership says we're a family, it now feels like a promise, not a threat. Silence, a good kind. The kind where people are sitting with something that actually means something. A few weeks later, we held our first realignment retreat. This time, no whiteboards, no speeches about sacrifice, just a round table of lived stories, learnings, and paths forward. I didn't lead it. That was important, because integrity isn't about being the face of change. It's about building a system where truth isn't punished. At the end, someone, Joe actually, raised his hand. "I used to laugh when we said we were a family," he said, "because it felt like one of those families where everyone walks on eggshells." People nodded. "But now," he glanced around the room, "now it kind of feels like a good family. Like one where you can call out the uncle who sucks and still get to carve the turkey." There was laughter. The good kind. I smiled. Didn't say a word. I still keep the manila envelope Jamie dropped off in my apartment. It's in the bottom drawer of my desk, unopened, untouched. Not because I regret not taking it, but because it reminds me how close I came to walking away instead of walking through. Curtis once told me to act like family, and I did. I just brought the kind of family he didn't count on, the kind that tells the truth at the dinner table, the kind that doesn't keep secrets just to keep the peace, the kind that remembers.